Only a sick mind or a weak mind, or both, would ever require gods. Now, the point is, the mind is a tool for survival, so obviously it is not going to ever understand things which are beyond survival. That is why humanity has lived and enjoyed more or less living on the brink of survival for the whole time. Now, survival is not only of the physical body, there's also survival in the social realm, since we are social creatures, and there's also survival at the personal level, because the mind can easily fabric a lot of machinations, especially if one is not knowledgeable of how their mind works. The mind can create a lot of machinations. The mind's only purpose is to just create. The only purpose of the mind bearer is to simply direct it in whatever way. But the point is, if a mind is born and programmed to be weak, the point is, such people will not be able to comprehend the capacity of the mind to create and the fact that it constantly creates, so they will simply shift it out of control. The more one learns, the more they fill the mind with things that can easily turn around and screw them over. Only an ignorant mind requires deities, because through most religions, what a deity is, it's nothing else than magic. Now, anything that the mind cannot comprehend is indistinguishable from magic. When the first lightning struck, the unaware mind wanted to find out what that was. Up till then, when it was fully a drone, when it was living like an animal, there was no problem with the lightning, because, as an animal, they were already used with what lightning is. They didn't require knowing what that is. They just knew it was a phenomenon, and that's it. But when awareness starts to grow, the point is, the mind, if not accustomed to, the point is, it will simply flood you with questions. Questions are a good distraction, because an untrained mind will always be distracted easily. And don't ever forget that distractions are, well, let's put it simply, the best luxury that poor people can afford. That is why people who distract themselves are usually poor. And why do you think this whole sick society is built around keeping you distracted from who you are? A religion usually doesn't tell you who you are. It just tells you that you're insignificant and that you need a deity, usually a male deity, to represent who you are. And you also need someone else to connect you to that deity. When if that deity actually created the whole world, if that deity was strong enough to actually create the whole world, you're basically part of that deity, albeit a very small part, but you're still part of it. So there's definitely a direct connection with that. So any religion that actually calls you, to, need someone else, or has you call to someone else, for such a communion, isn't that religion more like severing you or lying you that you are basically severed from creation? Because once someone believes they are severed from creation, that they are separate from creation, well, ignorance will instantly settle, because they will feel no longer bound by creation. They will feel some kind of gods by themselves. And if you feed the human ego enough, well, not only do you bury it in ignorance, as well as the being, right, who identifies themselves with anything which is meaning, right? The point is, you also feed the so-called ego, so technically you're creating separation. When you embrace the ego, you automatically separate yourself from the others. When people piss you off and you give in to the anger, that is separation, because you want to run away from anyone else. Why do you think this society is all about separation, right? Because in religion there is always separation. People have fought wars for religion, and ignorant people always end up being or believing, they are some kind of God favored, right? Just because they are who they are, right? Is the so-called moralists. They are always perfect, they know everything, and well, obviously they can't be judged by God because, well, they are who they are, right? Well, the perfect embodiment of narcissists. So, what is a god to those minds? Well, a god to those minds, well, let's take the example of Christianity. In Christianity, God is nothing else than basically a slave, right? They are, such minds, such weak minds are technically deifying and glorifying the so-called God, but technically God is nothing else than a slave. Let's take people's way of addressing this God, right? If we take it psychologically, right? All that people say towards the God of Christianity, right, is God giveth, right? So they are just victimizing, right? And God taketh, right? It's something, they play this theatric play that, they are simply helpless and they can't do anything, against God's will. In a way, it is true because you can't control creation and you don't have much control over things. But when you do this through victimization, it just goes to show that the only thing you want is attention, right? And if you don't get attention from humans, you will likely seek attention from an imaginary deity. When it comes to the relation, right? The relation is very toxic to this deity because all that people, these ignorant people who promote religions want is God give, right? God give to me, or why did you, right? So it's like they're scolding God when things don't go their way, or they're just requesting things from the deity, right? There's basically no connection to the deity. It's just a request, request, request. It's basic narcissistic functionality, right? They just request, they just take, they just want, they can't give back, right? It's no wonder why religions were all born of narcissism, more or less, especially the monotheist ones, because monotheist religions always worship one single god, and it kind of always happens to be a male god. All this being said, hopefully you liked this video, hopefully you found this video introspective enough. You are appreciated, take care of yourselves, Ferenc on board signing out.